Hello everyone and welcome back to Pyanodons mods with our updated tutorials. This is Otaku Showboat. Today we are going to be discussing the tin processing chain. Now as a reminder, nothing regarding the actual chains themselves, with one key exception being glass, has undergone any significant modification since the last time we met in the first versions of these tutorials. They are still on my channel. You can go back and watch those to see the full chains in action. This video is basically going to be 100% hell mod. 100% hell mod. We aren't going to build it out. In fact, I leave it to you to discover for yourself and decide how you want to actually build these processes. We've seen the types of buildings that are involved in this already. You can go back and see an example of how I build them in the previous tutorials. This is just going to cover a number of the changes that have happened over the course of time since the previous tutorial, in regards to the release of Pi Alien Life, as well as updates to the rest of the Pi suite that have changed, in particular hot air processing of plates in general, as well as how you get some of the outside inputs. Now, if you have been enjoying these updated tutorials thus far, please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you are so inclined, you can head on over to twitch.tv/OtakuShowboat to leave a follow, to be notified when I go live on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to approximately 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time to watch my Pi playthroughs. You can do all the social stuff through the links below the video, including supporting Pyanodon's mods development at patreon.com/Pyanodon and myself at patreon.com/OtakuShowboat. So, tin. Tin is going to be the first ore type in your game when you start a Flesh playthrough that you will need something to actually mine. You will need a outside fluid, quote-unquote fluid, in order to mine tin. In this case, you need steam. Steam is required for the mining of tin. It's very low amount. It's like 1 steam per cycle, something along those lines. It's really low, the amount of steam that you need. So just bear in mind that when you have tin, here's a tin ore patch. It is 10 steam, excuse me, per mining operation. So each cycle is 10 steam. There we go. 10 steam per cycle. Each cycle on a standard mining drill is 0.5 per second. So every second, every second, you are using 5 steam per drill. And this also has a mining time of 100% basic mining time, so it's going to be like normal vanilla amounts of mining drills in order to get yourself a yellow belt here. Unlike some of the other ore types, which have a mining time of 200%, which means you need double the amount of miners to get the same output as otherwise. So, tin also requires a few more stone furnaces when you are directly going from ore into plates. This is how you will start your game, is doing ore into plates. You do not need a ton of tin at Red Science, because your tin is going to be used almost like exclusively, I would say, for making buildings. In particular, you're going to get tin so that you can make quartz mines. Thus, our next tutorial is going to be quartz processing to make the glass products that you need for your Red Science. And it's at that point that I'll go into the hot air, the actual production of hot air after we go through glass, I think. It's either we'll do aluminium after glass or hot air after glass. I'm trying to decide which of those things I would like to do first in our tutorial series. The hot air video will be a brand new video and not really an updated tutorial, so that will be listed accordingly. So this is what you'll do at the start. Once you get into Red Science, our next step up, we will be able to process into grade 1 tin. We will start by screening our tin once we, of course, have access to engine units, which requires aluminium at red science phase, so do bear that in mind. You'll need to have engine units by now to make some of these buildings. We screen the tin ore into grade 1 and grade 2, and then the grade 2 will get crushed back down into grade 1. And you'll have to deal with the stone. And then you can use fewer furnaces. In this case, being able to use the advanced foundries is very helpful, because these do not use a fuel, and you will have access to them by this point. And that can make you significantly more plates than previously. An extra +1 plate over the previous process is rather significant at this point in the game. This, thus far, will be the lowest output of plates, but it will be your first thing that backs up. More likely than not, you're always going to be having enough tin. You will generally speaking always have enough tin. It's just one of those things, even though it's not that much of an output, you'll have enough, especially at this phase of the game. Now, once you get into green science, you will have access to 2 more options for getting into plates. Your first option is to take that grade 1 and screen it into grade 3, as well as this tin ore rejects, which can be crushed in a secondary crusher back into additional grade 1. Additional grade 1. So this is a loop that will give you, in total, thanks to Helmut's Matrix Solver, 2.2 tin grade 3. That can then be washed into grade 4, and it is at this point that you have options. You can either smelt that grade 4 directly into plates and get 4.3 plates, or you can do one additional step, which is to powder it in a ball mill, or in this case, crush it into dust, tin dust, then throw it into an electric arc furnace by adding borax and graphite to make molten tin. And then you can use hot air to cast into additional plates. Now, we look and see here we have 4.3 versus 6.8. That is a major difference. That is a huge difference. It is absolutely worth going all the way up to molten tin. It will always be worth going up into the molten tin at green science, especially if you compare it to the red science max output here for your 15 ore in at 2.5. It is a big difference between looking at like for like 15 ore in to the plates out. However, the actual molten tin is relevant. It will be used in alloys. You will want to use the molten tin for alloys, specifically tin chromium alloy, to use as catalysts for other processes, specifically regarding the petrochemical processing stuff. You definitely want to be using molten tin for more than just tin plates. This is how you can get to it early. And I would say that this is a very simple process in the grand scheme of things, and you will want to make sure that you have your ore scaled up. Like, definitely scale up this beyond 15 at some point. Get it relatively high, so that you always have enough tin plates and you always have enough molten tin to cover all of your other things that you are using the molten tin for. Now, that covers green science. What about at blue science? Well, blue science also adds a couple, 2 more methods of making molten tin. So if we go up to our tin dust, we've made our tin dust. Instead of converting our tin dust into molten tin, now we get a few more steps. Just a few more steps. And by a few, I mean a lot more steps to process this tin dust. We will use a jig plus methyl isobutyl carbonyl, or MIBC, to process that tin dust into tin rejects and tin concentrate. This is a lot of methyl isobutyl carbonyl. You will need this also for the titanium processing chain. In fact, it is required to get to your first molten titanium, so do bear that in mind. If you ever want to have molten titanium, you will need this by necessity, and this is copper, petroleum, and acetone. I'll leave it to you on how to get these. By this point in the game, at Blue Science, you should have the ability to make all of these if you don't already have them. In fact, you should already have acetone through your phenol production in the Circuit 2 processing chain. So, you have what you need by now, or the ability to have what you need to make this MIBC. It is expensive. So only think about going up this process if you are willing to spend the resources to do so. Otherwise, scale a previous process. You will also need organic solvent in this process, but we will get to those outside inputs as we go along. So our tin dust in the jig is going to give us tin concentrate as well as tin rejects. It is the concentrate that we will be converting into molten in this option. There is one more option that we will do further processing upon this tin concentrate that we have access to at this Blue Science phase, but we're going to look at this chain here so that we can have a point of comparison in the plate output between these two processes. So, what do we do with the tin rejects? Well, we screen the rejects into powdered tin as well as tailings dust. We will have to deal with the tailings dust in some way, shape, or form. The powdered tin plus organic solvent, which you should have your answer to the organic solvent problem by this point in the game at Blue Science. Added into a hydroclassifier to convert into tin solution as well as tin slime. We'll get to the slime in a little bit. We will be converting as much of our tin solution into slime as possible or into tin concentrate. Our next step is that we will add sand to scrub our tin solution into a bottom pulp and a medium pulp, and we have to deal with the tailings. The bottom pulp can then get scrubbed with additional sand into tin concentrate. So there's the end of that line. The middle tin pulp, we then have to add chromium in a hydrocyclone to convert that into more tin slime. All of the tin slime will then be thrown into a thickener with water to thicken into tin slime overflow, and then that needs to be added to soda ash regeneration solution, which is ash plus water plus saline water, to make tin pulp stage 1. Then, in a grease table, you have to add filtration media to the tin pulp as well as grease, which we've talked about grease in the previous copper processing update video on ways in which to get grease, to give you additional tin concentrate, and it gives you lubricant back that you can use to cycle back into your grease. Essentially, that's the idea there, I would imagine, is that it's going to give you lubricant to cycle back to make your grease again. Now, all of that tin concentrate can then be converted into molten in an electric arc furnace by adding the borax and the graphite, and then that can be cast into tin plates through hot air casting of tin plates. However, you have the option of doing further processing beyond the tin concentrate at Blue Science. Unlike most other ore processing at Blue Science, you will not have access to high-grade tin. That is this is one of the exceptions where you will not be going all the way up to high-grade processing at Blue Science. Instead, what you go up to is high-grade tin concentrate in a classifier without any outside inputs whatsoever. So why would you do tin concentrate into molten? You will never do tin concentrate into molten. You will always classify into high-grade tin concentrate at Blue Science. There is no reason whatsoever to not do the one additional step without any outside inputs here. You only have to deal with this output of sand, which loops back into the inputs in these scrubber steps up here, if you so desire. I personally don't like looping back that type of a product, so I would just void this and have a separate input of sand. But that's just me. This will make additional molten for you in the same process and give you additional plates. We can look at our same 15 ore input, compare 21.1 versus 33.7. Yeah, this is a much higher value than just leaving it at tin concentrate. Definitely, you will always go high grade tin concentrate at Blue Science if you decide to go beyond the green science level of processing here at tin dust. If you decide to go beyond tin dust, you're going to go this way. You can basically just ignore that this exists at all. Now, what about high grade? Well, as it turns out, it is at Yellow Science that you will unlock high grade processing of tin, and we can look at that now. Yellow Science will also give you access to the reduced and sintered, so as it turns out, you're probably not ever going to stop at high grade. So as we go down to our high grade tin concentrate, what do we need to do to get into our high grade tin? Well, to get into high grade tin, we will have to add oleochemicals, which by Yellow Science you already have an answer to getting oleochemicals, whichever method you decide. Similarly with kerosene, you already have kerosene for rocket fuel, I would say, by this point, but I would definitely say the titanium tetrachloride with low distillates is always an option for you, because that is giving you 150 kerosene for 100 low distillates, which, yeah, I would say that that's pretty good. Otherwise, there is Arcods. There are Arcods now that you can use for Arcod jelly, as well as this Moondrop flower thing. I haven't looked too much into this yet. Expect a video about that at some point. Or you could spend nichrome with crude oil to give you some kerosene and diesel. So, yes, lots of options for kerosene. This will actually also give you a sulfuric acid output that you can do something with. I don't really know what you would want to do with that, but anyway, there it is. Then, you have to, after flotation of that concentrate into pulp 2, add a biofilm to that pulp 2 in a filter. You use the biofilm to filter that pulp 2 into pulp 3. Then you'll evaporate that pulp 3 directly into a high-grade tin mix, and then solid separate that tin mix into the high-grade tin. This is also going to give you iron ore dust. Iron ore dust that you can do whatever you want with. Just bear that in mind. And one thing that I did not mention in the iron ore processing video is that iron ore dust is also used in the uranium processing chain. So, yes, you will need to have this stuff available to you for your uranium processing chain later on down the line. Now, you can convert this high grade directly into molten and then cast the molten in the same process that we've been seeing this entire time. Or you can reduce it by adding sodium sulfate and diesel, which we have discussed the various methods of getting diesel at this point, and you should absolutely already know what process you are using for the sodium sulfate by Yellow Science, so do bear that in mind. And then we can again just cast that into more plates. We can see 48.4 versus 65.8. Alternatively, we can then add lime and syngas with our pressured air and a solid fuel of any type to our reduced tin to make sintered tin. And then go up to 84.2 or 133.6 for our 15 ore in. So yeah, you'll not stop here. You'll, generally speaking, go all the way up to reduced and center it. And center it. I'm ignoring all of the not hot air stuff in this particular tutorial. You can look at those on your own. Use Helmod to see what they look like without the hot air. You can use Helmod to see what they look like if you do the centering of high grade, because that's also an option. You can just skip reduction and go straight from high grade to centered, but it halves your output overall. It would be half of this in general. So there's 10. The full 10 processing chain. I know I've kept the Mark 1s here yet again. It is overall not the most complex of all of the different ore processing chains, but it is one of the longer ore processing chains at Blue Science, if you go all the way up to the high-grade tin concentrate. It's also one of the more interesting in terms of what gets unlocked at Utility Science, because they're just... It feels like there needs to be a purple science with these. It just... For tin in particular, it feels like there needs to be a purple science phase that unlocks the high grade, and then the reduction and centering at the very end. But really, one of my complaints / issues that I've had with just reduction in general is it feels rather superfluous most of the time with the vast majority of the ore processing chains, because it unlocks with centering. You reduce and then you center, and there's no real reason to not do that extra center step. Again, one key exception being chromium, which actually does give you access to reduction earlier than other things, earlier than centering. So sure, there's one thing there, but otherwise the vast majority of the time you're not going to be doing anything besides reduction and centering, if you even do that process in the first place, because it is not necessary in order to complete the pie suite. None of these yellow science level of processing are required to complete the pie suite. You can very comfortably sit way back here at green science level of processing for the entire game. You can very comfortably sit at green science level of tin processing in particular for the entire playthrough, and not have to deal with MIBC ever with tin. You can do the same with titanium and never actually deal with molten titanium. So it's all options. These are the options that you have. I have presented you the options in this video that you have. It is up to you and the state of your game what you want to do and when you want to do it, in terms of all of the different ore processing stuff. That is by design. It is the Pyanodon absolutely designed the entirety of the pie suite to give you options, and for you to decide which options are best for your given situation in a playthrough. So here are your, I would say, quote-unquote, best options as you go through the various levels of tech. Some of these you may not want to do, so you don't have to do them. You can very easily not do this. However, with that, I would like to thank you all for watching. This has been Otaku Showboat. If you have been enjoying the tutorials thus far, please be sure to comment, like, subscribe, hit the notification bell, and if you are so inclined to watch the VODs and watch the show live on Twitch, you can head on over to twitch.tv/OtakuShowboat to leave a follow to be notified when I go live on Sundays, Tuesdays, and Thursdays from 10 a.m. to approximately 1 p.m. U.S. Eastern Time. You can do all of the social stuff through the links below this video, including heading on over to my Discord server, where you can find the link, the file, I should say, that has the production line to share with for this tin. So tin production line, this entire production line, as it was at the beginning of this video, is available through my Discord server. It is a string. You can then download it, just paste it in to the download upload, and it'll give you this. You will have to switch everything over to ingredient input and define exactly how many ores in per second you want for it to tell you what stuff you need for it. So there you go. You have access to it. Again, thank you all for watching. I will, of course, see you all on the next one.